Good afternoon. Welcome to the Biz Coach Show. I am the host, Eric Whitmoyer, the founder and CEO of My Biz Coaches. And today I'm joined by Katrena Pitts, who is the owner of Studio M Financial. Katrena, please share a little bit with what you do at Studio M Financial and how you serve your clients.
Sure. Thank you, Eric, for having me. I'm super happy to be here today. And we at Studio M, we help our clients gain personal financial competence and knowledge while they're building their early business. So we specifically serve early stage small business owners as they are transitioning out of traditional employment, so W-2 employment, into entrepreneurship and all of the components that come with that transition.
Awesome. That's amazing. So, and you say you actually work with people who are from a personal financial perspective as they're preparing to move into business ownership. And I can actually relate to that because I've about 3.5 years ago started working with startups for the first time. The first couple of years of the business, we didn't work with startups, but 3.5 years ago, I had a good friend of mine make a referral to me, and I met with them out of courtesy of the friend. And I said, hey, sounds like you guys got a great business plan. Gave him some guidance and direction and said, okay, on your way now. Because I don't work with, startups. And they presented their plan and they said, hey, we'd really like to work with you. And so I made some adjustments and brought them on board. And what's interesting is that's created a whole new focus of our business, helping startups. And in that, one of the ongoing conversations is the transition financially from being a W-2 earner of some sort and moving into a world of entrepreneurship and having to manage the personal finances along with the business finances. Oh, thanks. If you didn't already like doing that, now you got to do twice as much, if not 3 or 4 times as much, right?
Exactly.
But yeah, so interesting, really great concept. So tell us, how did you get into that? What brought you to that space?
So, well, first of all, my own kind of whoopsie daisies from a personal financial standpoint in my 20s. And more specifically, it's actually to me, it's a funny story. And anytime I tell it, other people, laugh at me, not from a, pointing and laughing, haha, but from a kind of sucks for you that you had to deal with that. But congratulations, you made it out of it. But the day before I turned 21, I'll keep it super, super brief, but it definitely leads me to where I am today. The day before I turned 21, I was working at a mall in Nashville. And usually out on my breaks, I would go and just grab cookies from a place called Christie Cookie that made the best chocolate chip cookies, hands down. And so I would go on my breaks, and I went that particular day to go buy a couple cookies, and my debit card was declined. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. She ran it a couple different times, and it still was declined. And then I gave her my credit card, and that also was declined. I thought, that's interesting. And didn't really, I thought something of it, but not like, I didn't put a ton of brain cells into it at the time because I had to get back to work. And so I went back to work, finished my shift, went home and went to bed, and woke up the next morning thinking, oh, I need to go check my bank account to see kind of what the challenge was. Was it, what happened? Was it, identity theft or what those things? Now, mind you, this was early 2000, so almost 25 years ago now. And looked at my bank account, and it had this bright red number that said negative 100. I think it was either $125 or $175 in the red. I thought, okay, well, this is my 21st birthday, so I have plans, and money is required for those plans, and it clearly states that I don't have any. And my credit card was overdrawn, and not overdrawn, but maxed out as well. So I effectively had no money at all for my 21st birthday. And we were having dinner with a bunch of friends, and it was supposed to be a whole big deal. And I was very excited about it, but obviously couldn't afford it to do it. And so I had a friend of mine who was actually supposed to be with us for dinner that night, but couldn't because he was flying out to go visit his family. So I said, hey, my compromise is I'll go see you up at the airport. I'll meet you at the gate. This is before 9/11, a couple months before. I'll meet you at the gate, and I'll just see you off and be fine. Well, in those days, and I think it's still the same now, you had 30 minutes or so before they started charging you for parking. So like the first 30 minutes was free kind of deal. So I was like, okay, I've got 30 minutes from the time I park my car to the time I get back. I've got 30 minutes.
Oh no, I can see where this is going.
So I am like tearing through the Nashville airport. Hey, Matt, how's it going? Good to see you. Happy birthday. Thank you so much. Hugs. And like, holy crap, I've got to get back to my car because I'm running out of time and I have no money. So I'm booking it to get back to my car, throw it in reverse, get to the gate. And I was like 30 seconds over. So
Oh
I had
no.
to pay $1. I had no, like, when I say no money, Eric, I mean no money. And somehow or another, I still think it's like absolute miracle. In my old crusty car, I think I had like a couple of
Dollar
quarters,
and change.
some
Oh
dimes, like
man.
in my console that were like just crusty. But I don't keep things in my car. So the fact that it was in there was absolutely miraculous. But I was, giving the attendant all the pennies and quarters that I had just so I could pay the $1 to get out of the Nashville airport. And that was my sort of introduction to I should probably get my life together on money management.
Mm.
And it was a rude awakening, honestly, because math, my mom tried to teach me, but I didn't really grab a hold of it. And when I was growing up, she tried really, really hard. I just was not here for it. I'd rather watch the ball game with my dad and brother than how to reconcile a bank account. And that definitely came to bite me later on in my life. So I had a conversation with mom and dad. They transferred money, but obviously you don't get money then because 20 years ago it had to post and you could get
Yeah,
away with
yeah.
funds and all that sort of stuff. So still out of luck, but had to figure out I'm living off campus. I have a budget. I'm working part time, but I'm in a financial situation that I can't actually sustain with my income. I'm in an overpriced apartment. I can't manage the utilities, the gas, all those different things. And so I had to figure it out pretty quickly. So, sort of fast forward a little bit to my late 20s, I decided to take the Dave Ramsey Financial Peace University
Mm.
class.
Okay.
And that was life changing for me. And when I say life changing, I truly mean life changing. Making, I don't know, probably 35,000, I think, at that point, which obviously wasn't a lot then and it's not a lot now. But when I went through that class, I truly felt like I'd gotten a raise in my money because I was aware of what was coming in, what was going out. I could reconcile my bank account, even though he really didn't go through that. It was really just you're tracking your expenses, tracking your income, when are things due, and you're becoming a lot more organized and empowered to actually manage the money that you have coming in. So got out of debt, paid off my car, paid off credit cards, which was about somewhere between $10,000 to $12,000, making $35,000, mind you, was able to pay that off in short order. And that sort of started my financial literacy pathway. So I did a lot of classes at my church, facilitated those in the community as a volunteer as well for their financial literacy programs. And then I started doing business plan training for women who wanted to become small business owners. So walking them through all of their components of their actual business plan. So the marketing, the operations, the financials, all those things for women who wanted to be, have a bakery or, childcare or, CPAs or whatever they wanted to do, but they just didn't have that education and the understanding of what it took to actually operate a business, not really do the thing, right? They knew how to bake, they knew how to, take care of kids, but what does it take to actually run a business? And so taking those two things and really kind of smashing them together. I went through CFP and didn't really enjoy that because I didn't really want the advisory piece. I really loved the literacy piece. And so I
Hmm.
found an organization that did financial coaching, and that's how I became accredited to the AFCPE. So I'm an accredited financial coach on the personal finance piece. But I love entrepreneurship. So I decided to put those two things together to help small business owners figure out their personal finances and have the foundation to build their businesses. Because oftentimes, and we may talk about this, but oftentimes your personal finances are what you're using to build your business, right? Your business hasn't made any money yet. So how are you managing those sides of it while running your household, transitioning out of W-2 work, but also paying for the responsibilities and obligations of your business in a way that doesn't sink both of them, but you're kind of accounting for both aspects of it. And then when the money comes into your business, do you know what it actually takes to run your household? So
Right.
you're doing the correct owner's withdrawal and owner's draw out of your business revenue in order to actually finance your household. So it's kind of one big circle. And I like to think we live where personal finances and business come together. But that's my story. So from Terry through Nashville's airport to fast forwarding 20 years to really kind of honing those skills into being a financial coach for small business owners.
That's amazing. And to your point, I did kind of chuckle because I'm like, oh, I know this is going. You're going to get stuck and you're not going to get your car out. Well, luckily you found some coins in your. It's funny too because I actually had a similar situation. I probably was maybe 2 years younger than you, and it was a situation where I didn't have the money to put gas in the car, and the car stalled out, and I walked with I found $1.50 in gas to get enough gas to get me from where I was to where I needed to go. Right. It was like, and it was one of those things. You're just like, oh, the dumb things you do when you're young. Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's super crazy. Well, I appreciate you sharing that. It's an amazing story and a great path for you to kind of move to where you are today and what you do. And certainly to your point, as it relates to, and I say this quite a bit in the business coaching space when we engage with clients, say, there's nothing that happens in your personal life that doesn't affect your business. And there's nothing that happens in your business that does not in some way impact your personal life. Sure. So, to say that they're independent of one another is really it's nonsense. It's not even that's not accurate. And it makes it even more challenging because to your point, in regards to you were on a journey to fix your financial path personally, right? If your personal financial path is not resolved when you start a business, all you're doing is throwing a big gasoline bucket on top of that fire that you already have burning. Yeah. And because now you're just talking about potentially a lot more money, right? With the same poor habits and disciplines, right? Yeah. And so, yeah, it's so I appreciate you sharing that. And I think this is going to be a great episode because then the more that, we, as my business has grown in the last 6.5 years, and you and I had a number of conversations, outside of the call, the show today, but that is probably not only how most people fund their business. I'll actually share some some data with you in regards to the book that I'm writing. I talk about all the reasons why businesses fail. Well, one of those reasons is the number one reason by 82%, by the way, the number one of the reasons in every one of the survey selections that they used, 82% of the businesses identified financial issues as the number one reason for failing, right? Not necessarily the only reason, but at least the number one reason over and over and over.
Sure.
But in addition to that, the average business, the average business, so the average business starts with less than $70,000.
Okay.
And that's the average. That's all businesses. That includes companies that are funded with seed capital.
Really?
All the businesses, yes. All the businesses in its all entirety, everything that's tracked, that less than $70,000, $68,000 and some change.
Okay.
73% of all businesses start with less than $50,000.
Okay.
And 35.5%, something like that, start with less than $5,000.
Okay. I can see those two. The 70,000 was a little surprising, but I can see the 50 and the 5 only because, and sorry to cut you off, but only because like most of that is either you're taking things out of savings, you're taking things out of retirement funds, and you're using your credit cards to do that. And that's about the max that you would have in either of those categories, either combined, maybe more in your retirement, but how much you're comfortably willing to take out with all the taxes and all that sort of stuff. So I can definitely see that would be the amount. And it's just difficult to get seed money for a startup when you aren't a proven idea, right? You're not a franchise, right? So you don't have that sort of proven model behind you. You're an independent owner. So the banks or any sort of venture capitalist is going to be a little leery of offering you $250,000 for an idea where you're like, I just want to leave my job because I hate it and I don't feel valued. So give me $250,000 to see if this is
to see if I can make this thing work.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to take a hard pass on that one, and I can totally understand why they would. So that makes sense. I can understand that concept. The numbers were a little surprising, but thinking through it, that makes sense.
Yeah. So, and ironically, to your point, when I started doing my research on business failures and recognizing that cash was one of the big issues. Now, I say cash, it's not necessarily that they ran out of cash. It could have been that they didn't have sales. They may even have had a situation where, because of the failure, it was literally, I didn't have enough to bridge a gap that happened. Let's say, for instance, a seasonality factor, which we see that in like mountain towns and beach towns all the time, where businesses come and go all the time because they can't manage the finances over an extended period of time. It's a 12-month year, but they only may have revenue, really strong revenue for 6 of those months or whatever.
Tourist seasons, yeah.
Yep, exactly. So, and it's funny because when, and I know I've shared this with you briefly in other conversations, but when you think about there's 34.5 million businesses and only 6% of them ever reach $1 million in top line revenue, not profits, but just top line revenue. That means 94% of the people are making far less. Now they could be still living relatively well on a $150,000, $200,000 salary, or profit income, right? But I mean, generally speaking, most of those businesses actually 45% of them are zero to $100,000 in top line revenue.
Which is basically a 40-hour-a-week job, right? That you're not actually working only 40 hours a
Exactly.
week for.
Yep. Yep. And the average small business owner is only making about $65,000 a year. That was a 2024 IRS statistic
Again,
for small business
back to
owners.
a 40-hour week. You're back to a 40-hour-a-week job, right? For
But yet a business owner never works. As a matter of fact, I think the average was 56 hours a week.
oh, that seems
So
low.
I mean, that's the average that they shared, and it was an SBA statistic that I uncovered when I was doing my research for the book. So, but I think that this is a unique situation in this. I say unique. It's very common occurrence, but it's unique in the sense that, as we reflect on how does this impact my business, my personal situation, or my business situation, how does it impact my personal situation? I tell clients all the time, I'm like, I'm not sure that I'd go start that business unless is your spouse going to keep working? Because that might be a good thing to do. Because going all in on a business is a big. I mean, you might as well be at with the odds that are out there. You might as well be in Vegas.
Yeah, which I'm in some ways I'm my own kind of personal test dummy in some ways,
Mm,
for that, in the sense of going all in on the business and having planning for it. And this is kind of what we do here,
yeah,
is
yeah,
that planning piece of it. So kind of reverse engineering. When do you actually want to exit the W-2 workforce? And if that's in 5 years, okay, great. We have plenty of time to sort of set money aside, figure out the resources that we need, decide if you're married, if your spouse is going to continue working, how are those resources going to be done? Maybe testing out living on one income to sort of test
right.
out what that feels like, right? You have plenty of time to do that. But if you're looking at somebody who is, back to that, I hate my job, those top things, I hate my job, I feel underappreciated, work a lot of hours, and I just want to be done, then that's a little bit more challenging to work with, in the sense of the time factor. Not because it can't be done, but how are we planning for this? What resources do you already have available other than sheer grit and determination? You're going to have to pay the bills. You're going to have to put gas in your car. You're going to have to do some sort of networking and marketing, right? That may cost money as well for the business.
Yes.
Where is that coming from? So for us and for me, there was about a 2.5 year, even though the business was in my heart for many, many years, for planning purposes, it was probably about a 2.5 year process of what
Wow.
money do I actually want to use to fund my life while I'm working on my business. Because I kind of realized early on in the job that I had, starting my business and working it as a side hustle while I had a super stressful, high demand, high visibility job was not going to work long term. That
Right.
it just wasn't. I didn't have
Yeah.
enough hours, didn't have enough energy, didn't have enough focus to do those two things, because my job required so very much. I think I've told you I was working with C-suite level, board of directors, corporate governance things that was just nonstop. So in order to do the business the way I wanted to, there had to have been a separation, which meant I had to figure out when I could do that and the resources that made sense for me to be able to do that. And as a single person, right, I don't have a spouse's income to rely on. So I had to really be intentional about saving money, the withdrawal rate, what my actual monthly budget was comfortably. And I made some major adjustments a year before I even made the change to leave
Wow.
my job, on spending habits and living, and just a lot of different things that I had to do for myself to make sure that for 6 months, 8 months, a year, whatever my time frame was, I had that available for me, because it took a little bit of the pressure off of the building of the business, but it also took the pressure off of, will I be able to eat? Will I be able to, put gas in my car? Can I get to and from church on Sundays? Just those basic things that you need for your household. Can I keep my car insured? So really for me, it was about a 2.5 year process. And a lot of the extra money that I got from profit sharing from the job that I worked at, which was considerable and helpful, that just went to savings. Like it didn't go to, I'm going to plan an extravagant trip. That just went to savings. I'm saving. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not doing anything. It's just going to savings, a high yield savings account. We're just going to start accruing. And we're going to put a line item in our budget. We're depositing money every single month into that because I have a number in mind that I wanted to hit. And I needed to hit that number for me to feel comfortable walking away from my high paying job to do this thing that was effectively not paying me for quite a bit of time, right? And making
Right.
that even that mental transition of I'm used to a paycheck. What do I do because a paycheck's not coming in? How
Yeah.
do I even manage the mental part of that?
Yeah. Yeah. That's amazing. And kudos to you, because that takes a significant amount of discipline. 2.5 year to plan, to hold out and wait, especially if you're really passionate about what you want to do. I was like you, I was a well-paid sales executive, and I knew that the industry that I was in was waning, and it was because it was retail, and I knew that the time frame was limited. I thought it was sooner than it was, but at the same time, I wasn't far off. The truth of the matter is I started planning a couple years in advance. I wrote my first book. I started getting my certifications for the coaching I was going to do and everything like that. But even with that, I did not have the accelerated plan, and I certainly did not have the resources set aside. And like others, I tapped into my retirement fund to go all in on my business, which at that time was my trucking business.
Okay.
And I opted for that over coaching because I saw a direct line. One, I was already an investor in a small trucking business. And so I picked that individual as a friend of mine for many years as my partner in that business. And ironically, it turned out to be one of my most significant uh, career, phenomenal, right? Success story. And one of my biggest flameouts at the exact same bookends. You couldn't have had better bookends. I was like phenomenal and really, really bad ending. And so, yeah, I watched my retirement fund go up in flames in the end of that. So super frustrating. But to your point, the discipline that it took for you to put that together, I wish I had done more of that, because I would have preferred to have done it with the capital that I set aside for that project rather than the retirement fund. Because I don't even know personally, just reflecting on myself, I don't know that I looked that hard at those retirement funds and said, what if this doesn't work out? Am I okay with losing, $250,000 or whatever, right? And that was, I did not reflect, I did not think about that when I did it. I'm like, this is going to happen. I believe in myself, and I think a
Which,
lot of others do that.
yeah, myself included. And and sometimes reality hits us when we really don't want it to. And as you were talking, I've reflected a lot. And my business is still very new, so full disclosure, right? We're still very early. When I say I work with early stage business owners, I am definitely in that category of early stage business owners. But I often reflect, probably the last couple of months, is the things I would have done differently.
Mm,
Is I think I would have figured out a way, and this would have been hard, figure out a way to have passive income coming in to offset the draws from the savings account. So even
yeah.
if it's $1,500 or 2,000, whatever it is, I should have figured, I would have, should have, could have, whatever, figured out a way to have passive income in to offset the sole draw from the savings, sole draw from retirement, sole draw for the resources. That's one of the things I would have done differently. And one of the things that I probably would advise clients to do is figure out a way to have some sort of passive income coming in
Mm,
that is low barrier to entry, right? That you don't have to outlay a lot of capital to get the return for, but you can at least have a little bit of money coming in just for peace of mind or emergencies or budget pressure reduction, whatever, in order to do that. That's so as you were talking about, like, did I look at this critically? That was one of the things I wish I would have looked at a little bit more critically in my 2.5 year plan. I wish I would have considered that as well. Of maybe we should think about that. But to your point, like, no, I believe in what I do. It's gonna work, and this is really just in case, because it's really, I feel so passionate about this. And you, in your mind as a business owner, you think that passion is going to automatically translate into clients and sales and revenues, and the way that it works. Yes, people can feel that you're passionate about that, but that doesn't convert into clients, doesn't convert into revenue, doesn't convert into sales and stability. It's just for your business. So things I would have done differently. I would not change leaving and starting it. I would never change that. But I think I would have changed a couple of the planning pieces to get there.
Yeah, yeah, great. I appreciate you sharing that. That's great insight. And I would echo that. I think that I think there's an added piece to that too, which is when you're drawing it out of that bulk fund that you start with, whatever, however you came about it, whether you pulled it out of retirement or you set it aside or whatever, there's an emotional drain that comes along with taking out chunks of money to invest into your business that you just watch the big chunk of money go.
Yes. Yes.
And not having even a trickle going back in would make me feel a little bit better, right?
Like there's $50. Whew, that meant I at least made something. I realized I took 7,000 out, but at least that $50, I feel like I'm replacing it somehow. No, totally. Like that is the emotional side of it that we don't really consider. And I'm not a super emotional person. I have them like, I cry privately, I do all those things. I have emotions, but there is a tremendous emotional connection that we do have with watching numbers come down. And we talk about even with debt reduction, like get that first win, first win, pay off that first debt. It may not be the highest credit card, but it's the lowest balance and you don't have to think about it just to give yourself motivation to continue. But as you're watching those balances drop and drop and drop, your motivation to continue the grind and the hard work can also drop almost like not even at the same rate, but even at an accelerated rate because you're not seeing the payoff and the fruits from your hard work. You're just seeing spending money, drawing money, using money, but no replenishment of those resources. And it is a huge mental and emotional drag and burden for you that I completely understand. And it sort of makes you wonder, was I ready for this decision? Was I ready to start the business?
Right.
Do I need to do something else? Do I need to not even pivot and not take a step back, but really just don't take a step and just figure out it, find something that I can at least find more motivation and find some peace of mind to while I'm working on honing and refining the actual business proposition that I have, because I do believe in it and you may believe in it and whoever's listening may believe in it. But is there something that we need to be very honest with ourselves as business owners of how are we doing this in a way that has a legacy that lasts? Because we to me, and you may feel differently, but to me, the business is the tool for a greater goal, right? Like I wanted wealth accumulation, or I wanted to be able to offer jobs for other people, or I wanted to share this great thing, or I wanted to be able to fund my kids' college, whatever the end goal was. And we've chosen to use entrepreneurship as the tool to do that.
Right.
And sometimes we don't, and I'll say we, myself included, improperly evaluated how to use that tool, right? And so it needs some honing, it needs some development, it needs some strengthening, it needs some friction and some conflict to really get to what you're trying to get to for that end goal. So I still believe in that. I just got to figure out how to use this tool correctly. And sometimes that means I don't just keep banging away and using it. I really take a much better perspective and really evaluate how I want to use this tool correctly so that I can accomplish the things that I want to do. And if that means you have to take a step to the side or not take a step and reevaluate it, then give yourself the space and the permission to do that. It's not a fail. It's just a reevaluation.
Yeah. I would echo it 1,000 times over, because I would also, I would add to that in my experience in working with business owners that one of the biggest challenges is they get in, right, and they're dealing with one. You mentioned a few things like here. I'm spending money to get marketing, right? To do marketing, to try and generate my sales, to build my business. And then I realized, well, I'm going to need these other resources. So I use more capital to get those other resources, and everything spend. In the first year, I would tell you most businesses don't plan on actually even, I would say in many cases, you don't even plan on getting a salary, certainly not a livable wage, for the first 12 months, maybe even 18 months in many cases. And it depends on what you're plugging into and what's already available to you. But if you at least went in with that mentality, it wouldn't be so draining and so anxious. You would not be as anxious if you knew going in, hey, I'm not going to be able to draw a salary for a year. It would dramatic, and even if it took 14 months, at least it would be manageable. Right. But the challenge is so many people are thinking, oh, I'm going to bring in, I mean, I did it when I did coaching. I went into the coaching space as a business coach when I did this 6.5 years ago. I'm like, well, if I got clients paying me $2,000-3,000 a month for my one-on-one coaching solutions, I'm like, 4 or 5 clients, I'm making 150 grand, no problem, no brainer, easy. Well, there's costs for
Cost.
services, there's solutions that are necessary, there's marketing fees, there's getting the whole off the ground, right? And then, oh, by the way, um, I don't know that I quite know how to sell myself just
Right.
yet. I'm not sure I figured that out just yet.
Right.
So selling me as a productized service is a whole nother conversation that, yeah. And all the while, like I said, I'm watching that money that I had set aside go chunk, chunk, chunk.
Spending. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think there's a couple things that you mentioned that I thought about is, and maybe we'll get to this. I don't know, but I'll say it now, is one of the things that I experienced for myself, and maybe you've seen this other coaching clients, is we do too much in the beginning before we actually know what we need. And I mean that
Yeah.
in the sense of we have inflated budgets, right? We buy all the things, we buy all the inventory, we buy all the tools, we buy all
Yep.
the subscriptions, we do all the different things before we've even
Made our first revenue.
correct or even know what we're really doing, right? Because I think there's a part of us
Right.
that I just want to be a business, right? And so a business says I have to have these things, a business says I have to do these things, and so we're spending all this for money, and we have an inflated budget, but we don't actually have, we have a very deflated revenue stream. We don't have any money coming in, but we're
Right.
spending things out because we didn't actually say, what does it really take for me to just, what do I need to do this? Do I need certifications, right, to actually do the thing?
Right.
If
Yep.
that's the case, then get the certifications to do the thing. But I don't need
Right.
to have an 8-page website. I may not need to have, a labeled vehicle with all this markings and the different, lights and things and what do they call it? The skins on the vehicle. I don't need all of that.
Right.
I don't need, I don't need all these different things that are costing me money. I just really need this list of 3 things that could be $75 a month in order to actually start my business and do it. But we feel very compelled to get all the things, but we never consider if we need them. And we actually never give ourselves the opportunity to say, actually, I don't really need that. I'm going to cut that off. It's just we
Right.
spend it and we spend it, we spend it because we're doing it, but we don't further evaluate. I'm not really using it, so I don't really need that. That cost can go away, and that may save me $200 a month that I can use for other things or not at all. That's also an option as well to not spend it, but we don't. That's part of that early stage thing that when I would love to get clients before they started so that we can talk through those things. You can
Mm.
fix it, right? You can address it. And I'm not suggesting that I don't want to talk to anybody who's in that situation, but
Right.
that's part of the starting part of it is really evaluating what is it that you actually need. And kind of to your point, do you know how to sell yourself? I'll admit that is not my strong suit at all. I shy away from it. I'm not super confident in it personally, which is problematic because you do need to do it, right? That is a part of what we do, and I recognize that, but it's not my strong suit, and so I tend to shy away from that. I tend to be less enthusiastic and less outgoing for that. But I do realize that there's a part of me that if I want my business to be successful, I'm going to have to figure out, and it's not selling me, because
Right.
then if they don't take it, then it's a rejection of me, and that's not really it.
Right.
They just don't need the tools and the resources and the services that I provide. So it's not me, and separating yourself out of that as a business owner is also very challenging, because we do take it that this is our baby. We take it very, very
Yeah.
personally, and so rejection of my services is ergo a rejection of me, and that's we want to shy away from that and not experience that as much as we possibly can.
Yeah. Because that only adds to the angst and frustration. And
Yes.
absolutely. Yeah. Great point. I really appreciate you sharing that because I think there's a lot to that. And I think that I would say, I mean, I could just literally just go back to the statistics I shared with you a moment ago. And I would say that in most of those cases, the vast majority of all those people dealt with exactly what you dealt with what I dealt with. Right. And ironically, if I look at all 141 clients in 6.5 years, and I will tell you that the vast majority of them all dealt with similar challenges on the come up while they were starting in the early years. I mean, I have clients today that drop $10,000 on something, and I'm like, why did you do that? You don't need that, you know. It's and I'm like, did you buy it with your company Amex? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, great, return it. Get the $10,000 back. We can use that for so many other more important things, you know. But
Yes.
you hit on something that I think is really important as well. You know, we go out, we buy the website, we buy the business cards, we buy this, we make the flyers, we do that. You know, we all these things, and all we really needed was like $100 worth of flyers, $50 worth of flyers, right? I mean, to go to the couple of networking events we're going to go to and pass them out or whatever. I mean, heck, for that matter, I would get you can get free digital business cards. That's better than an actual physical card, in my opinion, anymore these days.
Yeah.
Most people, that's what most of the younger people that I run into, that's what they want anyway, right?
Yeah.
So I think the irony is that to your point, we feel like to be a business, I got to go get my shirt, right, and I got to go do this, and I got to go with that, and brand this, and a large percentage of those things are not bringing you any revenue, and we do it long before we get our first dollar in revenue.
Right.
Or we're doing it while we're slowly trickling in the few dollars that we are getting.
Right.
And I think many business owners go through that. And that's that. And I think that goes back to what you coach on, which is learning to be more disciplined and identifying, you know, what are the things that I really need, and building a budget around that. I think, and that would be another thing, is one of what I talk about, my 7 core competencies. The second one, and I've shared this with you,
Mm-hmm.
financial acumen.
Mm-hmm.
I would honestly say, just my personal experience of the 141 clients that I've had, I will tell you that I don't know if it's 80%, but it's definitely 60 to 70% of them are not. I don't want to say that they don't have financial acumen. They do not have the level of financial acumen that they should for where they're at in their business today.
Okay.
Right. And worse yet, they're not likely working with the type of financial
Professional.
Yes, thank you. I was going to say advisor, but that's not the right word. Professional that will guide them correctly. That doesn't necessarily mean that a CPA is bad, but a CPA that just does tax returns is not the type of financial professional you need as a business owner to help guide you through the things you need to know about your business.
Right.
And none of that has anything to do with budgeting and then managing your personal finances and your business finances, which are totally interrelated, right?
Right. Correct. Yeah. I wonder. I would wonder. I think this is part of what I endeavor to do, is taking the scariness out of finances and the intimidation. It's probably a better way that we aren't
Yeah,
intimidated
great
by
point.
numbers. And some of the clients I've talked to, even if they're not entrepreneurs, some of my clients have been like, I just don't want to know because I know it's going to be bad. And that's what they say, is I just don't want to know.
That's even worse.
Yeah. I mean, well, you're like, well, they're just going to keep coming. I have a spoiler
Right.
alert for you. Notices are going to keep coming, and they're going to get meaner and meaner and meaner until people are knocking on your doors and hauling away your vehicle. So you should probably know what the news is now before it escalates. Right. So sorry to spoil the ending for you, but they don't want to know. And so I do think from
Right.
a business owner's perspective is, if I don't know that my business is challenged, or if I don't know, then there's some weird comfort that we have in that. But really, your financials, in my perspective, personal and business, is a decision-making tool. It just helps you make better decisions and informed decisions for your personal finances. Can I go buy a vehicle? I don't know. I make $7,000 a month, but I spend $8,000 a month. Probably you can't go buy a car because you're already underwater in every other thing. But if you know that, then you can decide, well, I really don't need that. I've never used that before in my life, and that's costing me this, that's costing me that. Oh, well, now I'm spending 6,000 out of the 8,000. Then yeah, you probably can go buy a vehicle. It's just a decision-making tool. So if we approach it that way and we coach it that way, of if you want to make informed decision on hiring, you want to make an informed decision on expansion, an informed decision on new products that you want to offer to as part of your suite of products and services. If you want to make an informed decision, then you just get the data, right?
Right.
We get data for everything else. How do we plan a trip? What's the best jewelry to buy? How do we put together this outfit? We gather data in so many other aspects of our lives, But finances were like, nope, nope, don't want to know, don't want to see, nope, it's going to be terrible. I'm like, why would we do that? No, it's just another data point. That's all it is. That's
Right.
going to change. It's not going to be the same. You're going to need to know how to navigate the changes in your financial situation. So if you know how to receive the data, understand it, and know the decisions that you can make out of it, it just makes you a better decision owner. And it makes you a better leader of your household financially to know what you can and can't do. So I endeavor to take the intimidation out of it, really just make it a tool that you can use to make decisions for you and your family.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love that, and I would echo that because it's not just in the personal side; it's on the business side. Because the owners that I engage with, many of them, it's the same thing. I literally I couldn't tell you how many times, and not to because I don't want to throw any of my clients under the bus, but I can tell you that there's a large percentage of them who can't read a P&L statement, can't read a balance sheet, and that's not the end of the world, because what I help them understand is that you don't necessarily need to know those numbers if you know what your KPIs are, and we can, and that, which is a whole nother conversation as we get into the business side of it. But I say, if we know what these key KPIs are, and I can show you what these three numbers mean on your P&L statement, and these three numbers mean on your balance sheet, that's really all you really need to truly know and understand. But so it doesn't need to be to your point, doesn't need to be overwhelming, and we can take the fear and the anxiety out of that. But the challenge is that you do have to, you can't, blind yourself from it, because it's not going to go away, and it'll only get worse. And to your point, you'll make better decisions when you understand your situation better.
Right.
You may not want to face it, but the first thing you have to do when you're solving a problem is face the real circumstance that you're in. You have to identify where you are before you can move from where you are.
Correct. There is I did I was a guest coach for a local retreat for small business owners who were specific to not fitness coaches, but fitness studio owners. So they had, saunas, had spin studios,
Okay.
um, wellness centers, yoga, Pilates, all of that sort of stuff. And so one of the clients that I met with, who was a participant of that, was explaining to me that she was getting ready to open her second location. She was located West Coast, but she was getting ready to open a second location in the Midwest, and had some questions around, and she literally looked at me and was like, I don't know if I can afford it, but we're already in construction mode. We're already
Right.
getting an SBA loan. We're already getting all these different things. And I was like, what do you mean? What do you mean by you don't know if you can afford it? And I tried to say it as kindly as I could, but I was like,
Right.
wait, that's not the question that's not what I was anticipating you saying. Was, I don't know if I can afford it, but I'm already down this pathway of spending money to do this.
Right.
And she's like, I feel like I need, and to her credit, and I think this helped, because kind of to your point of, I don't want to see, I don't want to know. To her credit, she was like, I feel like I should know these things. I feel like I should know that what my financial situation is. And she had sort of offloaded the financial piece to her business partner, so she didn't really have visibility into it. And again, to her credit, she said, I'm the business owner. I need to know these things. So how do I start involving myself in that more regularly? Even though the other partner was the financial person, she's the leader of the company, and if you're expanding out and making and creating more locations, I said, okay. And it was a very tactful, and this kind of like, how would you actually coach your client to that? Okay, do you have regular conversations with your financial person? Do you? If the answer is no, then you need to make that a yes. So whether that's
Right.
once a week, whether that's every other week, whatever the cadence is, you need to put that on the calendar, and you do not miss those conversations. And you want that that financial person to come to you with, what was the revenue for the week? What did we pay for that week? How much did, these are the things that we need to know. How many customers came in, how many clients, the reporting. You need to have it distilled and tell me where we are financially, what we have in savings, what we've paid off in debt, what we've made in revenue. I need to know these things. How many new memberships did we have? 0 or 10? Okay, is that on track? So I can know and understand these different pieces of information, so I can make a decision on whether or not I can afford to expand a location in a state that I don't live in.
Right.
Right? Because that's a lot of tax implications. You're
Yeah.
offshore, you're hands off, you're not in that state. There's a lot of things. You're having to staff it, which means you're going to have more people, office managers. We need to know these things. And so to kind of, to your point of, we can't shy away from it, I think we acknowledge it. I should know this. I really should know this. That's going to help me. And I feel like I can't move forward or make good decisions because of it. How do we actually do it tactically? Have a meeting, get the information that you need. Let's make some decisions together and make this regular and decide what information do I really need to know? Do I need to know memberships? Do I need to know construction costs? Do I need to know inventory costs? Do I need to know what do I actually need to know? And you need to figure out, kind of to your point, what are those real performance indicators that I need to know for the health of my business? How do I get that information? What does that information tell me? What decisions do I make from it?
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. Yeah. It's such a great illustration of exactly what I see with clients from your own perspective. Right. And it's kind of ironic, but how do you not know? That's the question. Right. And to be fair, I'm sure that many business owners kind of go in and like, in retrospect, they're like, well, I didn't know what I didn't know. The honest truth is it may actually been a benefit that you didn't know because you might not have chosen to do it. It's like ignorant is bliss, right?
I wouldn't recommend that as a statement.
No.
But congratulations that Lady Luck was on your side, but I would not.
Exactly. Well, yeah, I think that's the funny thing about that too, is that there's a lot more luck involved in some cases, but you can't, to go blindly into any project or endeavor where you're going to outlay a lot of capital or even take on a lot of debt. Either in those scenarios, you could lose a lot of money, or you could just go into a bunch of debt. Neither one of those are a good scenario. Certainly, coming out of that with a profitable business is the intention. But without the due diligence of going in and knowing, okay, if everything went to crap, what are my solutions? Because you can't know what that looks like without that data that you referenced going into it.
Right.
And I think that's where people really get burned. And that's where you hear people that started the business, then lost all their money. And I mean, my trucking business was a $2 million haircut. So yeah. And it was a bigger haircut because we had so much success in the front end that it was like, well, just keep, just like I said, lean into it, keep taking advantage of it, keep leaning into it. But then in retrospect, that made it even bigger. So when it did flame out, it was just like, oh, this is going to be super painful now. And the one lesson I learned in that regard was how hard it is to raise capital when you need it.
Okay. That was my question is what were the lessons? What were the lessons that were learned from that? So difficulty raising capital. So what were sorry, I'm going to turn the interview on you for a second. What did you attempt to do to raise the capital? Was it through debt? Was it through investors that just didn't work out? What mechanisms did you try?
Yeah, great question. So I did take on more debt. That was actually, that was how I scaled to where we were. So I took the money that I had, the resource that I had, quickly identified that because of my financial competence in the way of understanding finances, financial reporting, I had good books. I had good financials. The business was growing. And the way that I built it wasn't necessarily all bad because it was very calculated. I knew what I was giving up in return as far as the debt that I was accumulating. What I had not factored in was a 40% reduction in production.
Gotcha. Okay.
Right. I mean, it's like, I'm like, okay, well, if things drop 10%, we can finagle, we can muscle through this. A 40% reduction for 7 weeks buried my business. Right. And that was one. Two, I knew all along I was going to have to raise capital. When I say raise capital, I was going to go out and find investors.
Okay.
So I made my pitch decks and all that kind of stuff. However, I did not realize how challenging raising capital was. When I say raising capital, going out and trying to pitch an investor on your business plan, that in itself, I mean, I was running a business that was doing, I don't know, 500,000, about pushing 6 million a year.
Okay.
So I'm actively running a trucking business with 54 truck drivers, about 8 employees internally, managing the internal mechanisms and everything like that. And everything that comes along with that. And then I'm out on the road going to these pitch fests, trying to pitch my deck in front of a bunch of investors to get somebody who invests in my business. I did not realize, and I mean, I read some books and I talked to a few people, but I was like, I did not realize what an endeavor that was going to be, because I'm like, we have a relatively successful business. And at that point, all I needed to do, well, I needed the money for really was I needed a low cost way to restructure my debt.
Oh, okay.
But no bank would talk to me because of how much debt I had accumulated in the way that I'd grown the business.
Okay. Yeah, I debt. I have a love. I have
Yeah.
a. I don't have a love. I have a hate awareness perspective of debt. I don't like it, but I'm aware that it's a thing. If that makes any
Mm-hmm.
sense, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Like, because anytime I do hear clients, and I'm not categorically opposed to it, but I do think it needs to be used with intentionality, because
Yep.
you have to pay that back. And if you do not have a plan to pay that back, if you never make another dollar, how are you going to pay that debt back?
Right.
And if you don't have a solution for that, then I would advise you to either reduce the amount of debt that you are looking to get, or find a different way to do it, right? Because
Right.
they're not concerned about, oh man, we had down sales. That's not their issue. Their issue is you took out $50,000 with an 8% interest rate, and now you owe us $400, $500 a month, and that's on you to figure out how to do it. So unless you have, kind of to your point, of the solution to pay that back, I would advise you, or ask you, what are your alternatives? And if
Right.
there are no other alternatives, then okay, I guess we're going down this pathway. But if you haven't figured out what other things that we can do to raise this, whether that's we, try to reduce our overhead, or we try to do a promotional to raise revenue, like whatever the mechanism is, and that they're varied, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
not one thing that we can do, but I would advise you to figure out what you can do to raise that capital before you enlist yourself and hamstring yourself to debt, because not only do you have to pay that back, but that is automatically cut out of what your profit is, because you
Yep.
have to pay that back, right? So if your goal is to make money, you are reducing the money that you make, because you're already having to pay back money that you don't even have in the door yet. It's already obligated. So how do you figure that out? But I would also say, on the venture capitalist side, or the investor side of it, and I would be curious to see what you have seen, is depending upon the terms of raising that capital, what's the involvement of that investor, and what return
Totally
are
did.
they looking for, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Because if they're involved on the operations, and they're either equity investors for that, which means they're taking a part of whatever your profit is, and that gets carved off to them for whatever the time period is, for the next 5 years, 10 years, or if it's a delayed return, they want to see a return in the next 18 months, or whatever the terms are, you have to factor that in. If that is money that I am going to have to let go of, again, before I actually make the money. So I'm getting
Yeah.
this money, but there is a cost that comes to it. So again, I'd be curious to know what sort of the terms that you have seen, even as you were pitching. I realize you may not have gotten the money, but maybe you got to the level where terms were discussed, or you knew kind of what the expectation was from an investor perspective. And this is not me saying don't do it. That's not me at all. It's do it, but know what the cost is to you to get that money, because they are not just going to give it to you because you're a nice guy or girl. They're going to expect something back from it. So being mindful of that as well when you're trying to raise capital. What's the actual cost to you as a business owner, and are you willing to pay that cost?
Yeah. Yeah. Great. And I will tell you, the proposed solutions that were out there, it was cheaper to take on debt than it was to get an investor.
I can understand that.
Right. I mean, the money wasn't necessarily cheaper in the short term, but the long term of bringing on an investor who's going to now own 20-30% of your business is that's a pretty significant cost of money, assuming you build a business that's, let's just say for the sake of argument, worth $10 million. You just give away $3 million for 750,000,
Yeah.
right? In the grand scheme of things, if that's what gets you from where you are to where you need to go, then that was necessary. But you just, to your point, need to know that going in.
Right.
I would say that the like I said, the biggest mistake I made is I did not realize how challenging it would be to raise capital and how much it would cost me. I also learned the hard way, which we referenced earlier. how expensive money will be or how hard it will be to get access to it when you need it. The biggest thing that we educate our clients on today, and I think this is true in personal and in business, if you're going to have backup solutions and you're going to leverage credit to be a backup solution, which I know you went through financial peace, so I know a big piece of Ramsey is don't have debt, right? Don't carry debt, or don't even use credit cards in many cases. I know he's a big proponent of that. I don't believe you can really do that in business personally. I've seen some, but not many. Um, but what I do believe is that if you're going to, again, if you're going to use credit in any way, know your terms, know your expectations, all that kind of stuff, right? Have your back, your worst case solution, have the best scenario for your worst case solution. What I would say is, and what I see all the time as well, when I say all the time, I'm going to say 60, 70% of the time, it's I'm building the plane as I'm falling, and I'm making knee-jerk decisions based on what I have in front of me right now today, right? And so I think a lot of what my caution is to go back to the beginning and say, okay, build a better plan in the beginning. Because had you had the plans and you knew where they were, and you've got a general idea, when push comes to shove and you're falling off the cliff, you already have a series of plans to kind of go into, right? And you're never going to cover everything, but the problem is, and what I see, what people that don't do business plans is because you didn't think it through in a really deep intellectual way, you're not aware of all the options that are or could be available to you, and you don't know the resources that you could call on to help you during that period of time.
Right. So kind of to your point, you make those decisions, you procure money in desperation, right? Which
Yes.
means your terms are going to definitely be worse, right? Because
Yep.
you are at your worst financial position. So it's going to cost you even more to do that. And you generally take out more than you actually need because you're just desperate for funds at that time. You just need some infusion of cash. One of the that you mentioned, you just said it sparked a thought. Your book on the goal setting and successful
Mm.
goal setting. So one of the things when you said you're building the plane on the way down, it definitely made me think, because that's one of the phrases in your book, and I was like, that's actually a perfect example of it. You're building it on the way down, not on the way up, but you're
Right.
and your goal is to build it such that you build it to fly back up before you actually crash and burn, right? So there is there is a beautiful picture that's there. But kind of one of the things that we talk about here at Studio N is, what are those systems and how do you, from an operational perspective for your clients, what are those things that you can put into place to help you make those decisions? So you don't have to always run for the capital. You can sort of self-fund it. So having your
Yeah.
operations, right? So when you're looking at your bank account and you open your business bank account, which I know we've said that it's almost impossible to separate personal and business, but in this instance, personal
Oh,
account and business
absolutely.
account, please
Totally.
keep those
Yes.
separate. Everything else we understand, but
Right.
but for personal and business, you have your business account, have your sub accounts, like have your operations. So what are those things that you actually use to do, pay the subscriptions or pay your insurance or whatever, but also have a profit account. So when you have money coming in, determine from a procedural perspective how much you want to set aside and cut off from that income, put it over,
Yeah.
and make
That's
sure that you
amazing.
have that that reserve there. Now that is different from a reserve account. That's different from your savings. That's different from your expansion. Have those sub accounts as well. So every dollar that you're getting in revenue has a label already put on it. So we've said from an operational perspective, 5% goes towards savings, 10% goes towards taxes. So that when it
Yeah.
comes time to pay your taxes, you have the money there. It may not be all of it, right? Because there may be a shortfall there, but you're not having to come out of pocket 15, 18, $20,000 and you just sort of shrug your shoulders like, whoops, I didn't do that. But no, you have 10,000 there. You just have to figure out where the other 2 or 3 is going to come from. That's a way easier ask than trying to find 20 grand laying around. And then you are going into debt. Then you are doing those extensions and
Right.
those kinds of things. So even from an operational standpoint, that goes to your point of like, when you're putting your business plan together and being mindful and how you make those decisions financially, how are we operating? How are we planning for today? how are we planning for tomorrow? Because even if you are thinking about expanding your business, brick and mortar, adding new locations, you're going to need money for that, for the construction, for the procurement, for the build out, for all those different things. And you're planning already now for what you're thinking about doing in 10 years. And it's effectively a sinking fund, right? For what we're trying to do now to plan for later, or equipment that you need to replace. You have a fund for that, because in 10 years or in 5 years, whatever the shelf life is, I know I'm going to have to come out of pocket to replace these particular pieces of equipment. I now know that I'm funding that. So even if you do use debt, you have significantly reduced your reliance on it versus
Yeah.
your utilization of that, if that makes any sense. It's something that's there if I need it, but I'm not relying on it to actually fund my business. I've been thoughtful and I've planned from a financial perspective how I want my revenue to be treated. So that's one of the things that I am very adamant about is you gotta think these things through financially. And it's not just I'm starting my business today, but where do you want it to go, and how are you actually going to use your money to do the things that you want it to do.
Absolutely. That's amazing. Yeah, there's so many great nuggets, and I'm realizing how long have we been on the show already? Actually, what I'd love to ask Katrena is get you to come back.
Yeah, happy
Uh,
to.
I would I would love to do this again. I think that this has been an awesome episode. I'm actually learning from you, so I certainly appreciate the insights and the perspective. And I think that what it is, it's again, I don't even think that we're necessarily sharing anything dramatically new necessarily in any way. But I think what it is, it's processing and understanding a different way of dealing with the same thing that many people are dealing with over and over and over. Right?
Sure.
It's like, it's my in my book. You referenced my book in the goal setting. I tell people all the time, you are where you are because of the habits that you've created in your life. Good or bad, you are where you are, right? If your financial habits haven't been good, then likely you probably don't manage money all that well. And if you do it very poorly, you're probably just, even if you have a good income, you're probably getting by and don't have a whole lot of money set aside because you haven't developed those skills to do that, right? And I think and as I said, I'm 100% certain that carries over into your business life because I see it all the time, right? And we kind of manage the same way. And so if you don't develop those habits that give you better options, then you're constantly in that situation, and you may not necessarily be in the plane that's falling that you're putting together. I mean, I think in the realities of an entrepreneur, that's actually what you're doing most of the time anyway. But if you at least know the options in advance before you find yourself in a situation that you're like, now I have no options, I don't know where to go, and oh, by the way, I'm just going to grab straws at whatever comes at me. This is when you make very bad financial decisions and run yourself in a situation that's untenable, right? And then you're picking up the pieces of your life afterwards, which just about every entrepreneur can speak to some degree of that to one degree or another.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, my family, I have entrepreneurs in my family. My dad and my brother had a business for several years, many years ago. My brother has his own, and just now where he lives with his wife. And the stories are very similar, right? Of the financial piece of it, the planning of it, the decision making, the habits, all of those are very, very similar. And they're very smart people, right? My dad and my brother are very, very smart
Exactly.
people. So it's not an
Yeah.
intellectual thing. It really just is an awareness, because we do tend to do things out of habit and or just what seems the right thing to do, and it may not be the right thing to do for what you're trying to do. It may be the right
That's it.
thing, not for what you're trying to do. So again, that awareness, that understanding. I don't need for you to be a financial wizard. I don't need that. I just need for you to be financially smart and financially aware so that you can make those smart decisions. But that's a conversation for another day that we're happy to have with you. You and I have talked about this. We could talk all day long and have a great
We
conversation.
absolutely could.
Grab a cup of water and let's wind this up when we're good for the next 3 hours. So that's not surprising, but I've enjoyed it. It sort of helps me remember why I started my business. So even with all
Mhm.
the challenges, with all the difficulties that I have experienced, even in my short business life, having this conversation just continues to remind me of why why I do what I do, why I started doing this, why it's been a 20-year journey to get to this point. So I'm learning from you as well, and just remembering my why. So thank you for
Mm,
that.
absolutely. Well, and I will tell you that I'm sure you don't need any more endorsement, but I'll throw it on anyway. Uh, Everybody needs your assistance, needs your guidance, needs that. And I say everybody, I'm going to say easily 80% of business owners out there are struggling to one degree or another with that sense of building a plan, having the discipline to stick to it, like you've already demonstrated in your own personal life, having the ability to kind of look out and without judgment and just help people identify, hey, this is what you're struggling with. This is why you're struggling with it. Let's try some different things that are going to give you better results, both personally and professionally in your business life and your personal life. And oh, by the way, you know what I can tell you as a business coach, you'll make better business decisions when you're not making financial decisions at the same time, right? So, I tell clients all the time, I'm like, if you're making decisions that are based on your financial situation where you're at right now, you're probably not making very good business decisions. Yeah, and unless you're in a situation where everything's golden.
We're perfect. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, yes. 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 If you were in
Yeah.
dire straits and desperation and worst case scenario, then yeah, your business decisions are not going to be that great because you're just
Well,
trying to dig your way out.
yeah, because even to my point being is that if you're even if things are relatively okay in your business and things are going along, but you're consciously making decisions. Here's what I see: people miss the opportunity to scale their business because they're tripping over pennies to get the dollars. Sorry, dollars to get the pennies. And sometimes it does require a leap of faith, and there is some sense of that every entrepreneur has to push through as well, which is a whole nother conversation for another day for certain. But there is it comes back to your point in regards to it, the awareness is there. You'll make a better decision. But if you're worried about how much money's in the bank account today and whether or not you're going to cover payroll next week, you're not making the best decisions for your business regardless.
Right. And you don't have the available brain space to even do that because you're
Exactly.
focusing on so much. If my bank account says $1,000, whoops, now it says 725. Whoops, now it says 680 because there's somebody in the back office that's just spending and spending. Oh, that subscription went through. So you don't even have
Yeah.
like there's two parts of this is there's definitely, I like to think of it this way. You kind of have on your car, you have high beams and low beams. And so the high beams is really that sort of far out visibility. You're looking for those things that are coming your way. The low beams is you're really just focusing on that little pothole that's in front of you. But as a business owner, you have to be able to focus and switch between the two. I need to be
Yes.
able to have strategy and long-term vision and look at those things that are coming ahead and make those decisions now before I get to that, right? I see the
Yes.
pothole coming. I can now move my car around it and miss the bump now. But oh wait, there's some things I really need to deal with today that are just tactical, that are day-to-day things that I need to work with. But we've got to be able to switch between the two, that long term and that short term, high beam, low beam. And if we're so focused to your point on those low beam things of what's in the bank account, what's in this, that tactical everyday thing, we don't actually have the space and the opportunity to have that far reaching plan. So we're just triaging and we're just trying to do things as quickly, as desperately as we possibly can because we haven't um, been aware that we have to have two different visibilities and two different visions and
Yeah.
develop the skill to be able to switch between the two with pretty relative ease, right? Like on your car, it's just
Yeah.
a tap of the little switcher thing and be able to quickly manipulate and move between long-term and short-term kind of planning and awareness. And that's a skill in and of itself that we have to develop as business owners and as leaders.
Yeah, that's an excellent analogy. Absolutely, you're constantly having to look at and I use filters, right? You're looking at through different filters, right? But that projection out, right, and then deal with the short term in front of you, and that never. I mean, it does eventually go away once a business reaches a certain level of scale because now you have other people that are managing some of those components of the business. But the early years and the until you probably and even after you get past $1 million, until you get to the point where you have a dedicated CFO or at least somebody in the financial space that's managing that stuff for you. That's the owner's biggest challenge is how did I manage all these different things that are going on in my business?
Correct. Correct. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Katrena, let me ask you please share with everybody where they can get more information about your business and what you do.
Sure. You can find me on online. I have a website, so www.studiom, as in metamorphosis, which is what the M stands for. So Studio M financial.net. You can find me there. You can find me on social media. I'm on LinkedIn. I am on Instagram. I am on Facebook. You can find me there. My handle is generally Studio M Fin, Fin. So for short, Studio M Fin. You can find me there as well. And I think those are the main ways you can find me. You can email us at let's talk, LETSTALK, let's talk at studiomfinancial.net. You can find us that way as well.
Awesome. Again, amazing. Thank you so much. It's been an awesome show, and I just love riffing with you. Has been a great experience again, as usual. But yeah, look forward to having you on the show again very soon.
Yeah, happy to come back. Loved it. Thank you so much, Eric.
Awesome. Thank you.